October 12th, 8:47 p.m. Alaska Airlines Flight 160 to gone off radar. No mayday call, no warning, just silence. When rescue teams arrived, they found only wreckage and two survivors. Ethan Cole, a man who'd spent years running from commitment, and Lena Reyes, a woman with a secret that would change his life forever. This wasn't just a story of survival, it was a story of fate. And what happened next, no one saw coming. If they hadn't met in the wreckage, they both would have died. The crash, the world exploded into chaos. One moment, Ethan Cole was half asleep in his window seat, the hum of the Boeing 737's engines a dull lullaby. The next screams, a violent jolt. The oxygen masks dropped like dead weights as the plane shuddered, lurching violently to one side. "Brace for impact," someone shouted. Ethan barely had time to cross his arms over his chest before the world turned upside down. Metal shrieked, glass shattered. The force of the crash threw him forward, his seatbelt cutting into his ribs like a blade. Then blackness. When he came to, the silence was deafening. Smoke burned his throat as he gasped awake, his vision swimming. The cabin was unrecognizable twisted metal, scattered luggage, snow drifting in through a gaping hole where the wing had been torn off. The cold hit him like a slap. He was alive. Somehow, groaning, he unbuckled his seatbelt and collapsed onto the debris-strewn floor. Pain shot through his ribs, his shoulder, his legs, but nothing felt broken. He had to move, had to get out before the wreckage caught fire, before the cold killed him. Then a sound, a whimper, his breath caught. He wasn't alone. Ethan turned, scanning the wreckage. There, pinned beneath a collapsed row of seats, a woman. Her dark hair was matted with blood, her face pale. One arm was trapped beneath the twisted metal, her fingers twitching weakly. "Hey!" Ethan stumbled toward her, his boots crunching over broken plastic and glass. "Can you hear me?" No response. He dropped his knees, gripping the seat and heaving with everything he had. The metal groaned but didn't budge, gritting his teeth. He braced his foot against the wreckage and pulled again. This time, it shifted just enough for him to drag her free. She gasped as he pulled her onto his lap, her body limp but warm, alive. "Stay with me," he muttered, pressing two fingers to her neck. A pulse thready but there. Her eyelids fluttered. Then, with a shuddering breath, she opened her eyes. Dark brown, terrified. Please." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Don't let me die." Something in those words, raw, desperate, lodged in his chest. Ethan wasn't a hero. He'd spent years avoiding responsibility, drifting from one freelance photography job to the next. But right now, this woman's survival depended on him. "I won't," he said, and for the first time in his life, he meant it. A sharp crack echoed through the wreckage. Ethan's head snapped up. The plane's fractured fuselage groaned, metal bending under its own weight. They had seconds before it collapsed entirely. "Can you stand?" he asked, gripping her arm. She tried, then cried out as her leg buckled. "I can't." Ethan didn't hesitate. He hauled her arm over his shoulders and lifted her against his side. "Then we do this together. What's your name?" "Lena." "Ethan, now hold on tight." "Lena." They staggered through the wreckage, snow biting at their faces. Behind them, the plane let out a final, shuddering groan before collapsing in on itself with a thunderous crash. The cold was brutal, the wind howled, and somewhere in the distance, an animal's cry cut through the night. They were alive, but for how long? The first night, the wind howled through the trees like a wounded animal, biting at any exposed skin it could find. Ethan tightened his grip around Lena's waist as they stumbled through the snow, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. Every step sent a fresh wave of pain shooting through her injured leg, but she clenched her jaw and kept moving. "We need shelter," Ethan said, his voice barely audible over the wind. Lena nodded, her teeth chattering so violently she couldn't speak. The thin sweater she'd worn for the flight was no match for the Alaskan wilderness. The cold seeped into her bones, turning her fingers numb. Ethan scanned the dark forest ahead. No cabins, No roads, just endless trees and snow. Then a flicker of hope. A small overhang of rock, partially shielded by dense evergreens. It wasn't much, but it was something. There, he said, steering them toward it. They collapsed beneath the rocky outcrop, their bodies trembling from exhaustion and cold. Ethan immediately started gathering broken branches and dry leaves, his numb fingers fumbling with his lighter. After 3 failed attempts, a tiny flame finally caught. The fire was pitifully small, but it was heat. It was life. Lena stretched her hands toward the flames, her breath shuddering. Thank you, she managed. Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he knelt beside her and carefully rolled up her pant leg. The skin beneath was already mottled with deep bruises, her ankle swollen to twice its size. You're not walking on this, he muttered. Lena winced as he probed the injury. It's not broken, she said through gritted teeth. Just a bad sprain. You a doctor? Nurse. That explained her calm under pressure. Ethan tore a strip of fabric from his shirt and wrapped her ankle tightly. We need to keep it stable. Lena watched him work, her dark eyes reflecting the firelight. You're good at this, Boy Scouts, he said dryly. A faint smile touched her lips, but it vanished just as quickly. The reality of their situation settled over them like a suffocating blanket. No food. No way to call for help. No idea if anyone even knew they were alive. Ethan broke the silence first. How long were you in Alaska before the flight? 2 days. Lena said. I was visiting a friend. He noticed how her gaze flickered away when she said it. There was more to that story, but now wasn't the time to push. A sudden noise made them both freeze. Something moved in the trees. Ethan's hand instinctively reached for a heavy branch beside him. The firelight didn't reach far, and the shadows beyond seemed to shift and twist on their own. Bear, Lena whispered. Or wolves, Ethan said, his grip tightening on the branch. The sound came again, closer this time. A rustling of underbrush, the snap of a twig, then silence. Seconds stretched into minutes. The wind moaned through the branches, but whatever had been out there was gone. For now. Lena exhaled shakily. We should take turns sleeping. Ethan nodded. You first. I'll keep watch. She wanted to argue, he could see it in her eyes, but exhaustion won out. She curled up as close to the fire as she dared, her body trembling even in sleep. Ethan stared into the flames, his mind racing. They couldn't stay here. By morning, the fire would be dead, and the temperature would drop even further. They needed to move, needed to find help. But first, they had to survive the night. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Ethan tightened his grip on the branch and didn't look away from the dark. The hunter in the dark, the fire, had dwindled to embers when the crunch of snow snapped Ethan to full alertness. His fingers curled around the branch, knuckles white. The howling wind had died down, leaving an eerie silence which made the footsteps even louder. Lena stirred, her eyes flying open as she sensed the tension. What is it? She whispered. Ethan didn't answer. His entire body was coiled tight, every sense straining toward the darkness beyond their meager shelter. Then a shadow moved, too tall to be an animal, too deliberate. A man stepped into the firelight. He wore a heavy parka, a rifle slung across his back, his bearded face withered by years in the wilderness. His eyes locked onto Lena with unsettling intensity. Well, he said, his voice rough. Didn't expect to find survivors. Ethan shifted slightly, putting himself between Lena and the stranger. Who are you? Name's Garrett. Heard the crash from my cabin a few miles east. His gaze flicked to Lena's injured leg. You to look like you could use help. Lena's fingers dug into Ethan's sleeve, a silent warning. Garrett noticed. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Something wrong. Ethan forced himself to relax, just cautious. It's not every day you survive a plane crash. Garrett chuckled, but the sound was hollow. Fair enough. He unslung his rifle, and Ethan tensed, but the man merely propped it against a rock. I've got medical supplies back at my place. Food, too. The offer hung in the air, thick with unspoken tension. Lena's whisper was barely audible. Don't trust him. Ethan knew she was right. But the cold was creeping back in, and Lena's ankle was getting worse. They wouldn't last another night out here. Lead the way, Ethan said. Garrett's smile widened. Smart choice. As they followed him through the snow-laden trees, Ethan noticed three things. Garrett kept glancing back at Lena, not with concern, with calculation. The rifle was still within the man's easy reach. The cabin he'd mentioned was nowhere in sight. After an hour of walking, Lena was limping badly, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Ethan slowed to help her, using the movement to murmur in her ear, "Be ready to run." Her eyes flashed with understanding. Garrett stopped suddenly, turning to face them. "Funny thing," he said, his tone shifting. "You look familiar." Lena went very still. "I don't watch much TV," Garrett continued, stepping closer. "But I do check the news, and there was this story about a missing woman." Ethan saw the moment Lena's fear turned to pure terror. $50,000 reward, Garrett said softly. For Lena Reyes. The name hit Ethan like a punch. The pieces clicked together: Lena's secrecy, her desperation to get away. Garrett reached for his rifle. Ethan moved faster. He lunged, tackling Garrett into the snow. The rifle discharged with a deafening crack, the bullet ricocheting off trees. They rolled, fists flying, snow spraying. Ethan got in a solid hit to Garrett's jaw, but the hunter was stronger. Angrier. A hand closed around Ethan's throat, then a sickening thud. Garrett's eyes rolled back as he collapsed. Behind him stood Lena, clutching a rock, her entire body shaking. "We have to go," she gasped. "Now." Ethan didn't argue. He grabbed Garrett's rifle and backpack, then pulled Lena into a run. Somewhere behind them, a wolf howled. Or maybe it was Garrett, waking up. They didn't stop to find out. Did your heart race reading this? Want to know if they escape Garrett's revenge? Smash that like button, subscribe for more, and comment survive if you need chapter 4. Your support keeps these stories coming.